Hello, everyone. Welcome to the English Flow podcast. I'm Tom. We're really happy to have you with us again.
And I'm Sarah. Seeing you here again makes me very happy too. We love you all. But before we begin, please tell us in the comments which city you're watching from. I'm really curious. And messages like, I practiced a little today, or I'm slowly starting to speak English, make us so happy.
That's why today we're starting a very important topic. How can I recover after making a mistake while speaking English? Many learners make mistakes while speaking English, and this can ruin their mood instantly. Saying a word incorrectly, mixing up a sentence, or getting stuck on pronunciation. These are all very natural things, but for beginners, they can feel like the end.
But you can't learn anything without making mistakes. When the brain detects a wrong signal, it immediately begins improving itself and learning faster. This is scientifically proven.
Let me give a small example. When I first started learning English, I was in a restaurant and wanted to say, "Can I have a glass of water?" But because I was nervous, I said, "Glass of waiter." The waiter looked surprised, but I corrected my pronunciation right away and finished my order.
These kinds of mistakes happen to everyone, and these mistakes actually increase our learning power.
After that moment, I told myself, I will never say this sentence wrong again. Because the brain processed that information more deeply, and that's exactly what happened. I never made that mistake again.
I had a similar experience too. When I first went abroad and visited a market, I said back instead of bag. The employee looked at me, I looked at them, then we both smiled. And I never confused that word again.
When you make a mistake, a voice inside you appears. This is so wrong. But this voice is nothing more than exaggeration. It portrays the situation as something much bigger than it really is. In reality, the person in front of you doesn't even notice it.
Even if they do notice, it doesn't matter to them because many other learners made the exact same mistake.
And now, to support yourself a little, you can write this sentence in the comments. Making mistakes cannot stop my learning. This sentence calms your mind and gives you strength on your English journey.
When you make a mistake, words get mixed up. The sentence breaks. It doesn't mean you forgot the information. Your brain is simply busy with the emotion of the moment and a short block happens.
That's why the most effective thing to do when you make a mistake is very simple. Take a breath, correct the word, and continue.
I always tell my students, did you make a mistake? Great, you've started learning now. Because from the moment you make a mistake, your brain uses both the information and the emotion as a tool.
I should also add this. Someone learning English does not expect you to be perfect. They only want sincerity and for you to keep speaking.
And learning English is like learning to walk. It's a long journey. On this journey, consistency is the most important thing.
Now that we've identified the mistakes, let's talk about how we can recover from them quickly. Many students give up right after making a mistake, but they don't realize that with a few simple steps, they can get back on track.
Yes, even if the student doesn't stop speaking, their facial expression changes immediately. They start blushing, their voice gets softer. But students who are aware of these reactions can recover quickly.
The first step is very simple. Stop, take a breath, correct it, and continue. These 4 effective steps can fix the flow of conversation instantly.
We can give a simple example. When a student says, he go to work, they immediately lose motivation. But it's enough to say something like, sorry, he goes to work. With this small correction, they compensate for the mistake.
And the most important thing is this: correcting is not making the mistake bigger. On the contrary, correcting increases confidence.
Many students think, the person in front of me shouldn't notice my mistake. But when you correct your mistake, the person in front of you thinks, they can correct themselves. That's great.
Hey, dear listeners, if you also use these techniques, you can leave a small note in the comments. I stopped, corrected, and continued. This kind of feedback gives us strength and inspires other learners.
The second simple technique is not taking the mistake personally. Many students think, I made a mistake, so I must be speaking poorly. But making mistakes is a very natural rhythm inside conversation. It has nothing to do with a person's value.
You're right, Sarah. Using a word incorrectly is not a judgment about someone's character. It happens because the brain experiences a delay while selecting the word.
Let me tell you a short story about this. Recently, I was practicing while walking with one of my students. It was very windy and the words were getting mixed up. At one point, they wanted to say beach, but accidentally said beach. They stopped immediately. I laughed and said, this is classic. Everyone makes this mistake once.
Because truly everyone does.
Yes. That student realized something that day. The mistake wasn't the end of the world. It was just a word slip. After that day, they started speaking much more comfortably.
The third technique is framing the mistake correctly in your mind. In English, this is called reframing. It means seeing the mistake not as a failure, but as a sign of learning.
For example, instead of saying, I said it wrong, this is terrible, you can say, I said it wrong, now this word will stay in my memory better. This change is small but powerful.
This mindset especially helps during speaking practice. Because the student no longer fears mistakes. Even if they make one, they can continue speaking.
The fourth technique is choosing a short recovery phrase for yourself. I always tell my students to say, I'm learning right now. This phrase breaks the panic feeling that comes with a mistake.
Some people use the phrase, I'm continuing. These small expressions help the brain let go of negative emotion and return to the flow.
Remember, what you think about the moment of the mistake is more important than the mistake itself.
Yes, becoming stronger while learning English starts with learning to control the mistake. The calmer you face the mistake, the faster you recover.
So, how can we use these mistakes as a tool for development? First, we need to understand this. Getting stronger while learning English is not only about tolerating mistakes, but about using them actively.
Yes, many students stop and feel upset when they notice their mistakes. But for some students, it's the opposite. When they see a mistake, they say, this is a clue for me. That's when the difference appears. Mistakes show you which area you can use to become stronger.
The first step is to record the mistake immediately. Some students carry a notebook to write their mistakes. By noting them down, they turn the moment from an emotional reaction into information.
One of my students used to draw a small star in his notebook every time he made a mistake. He would say, this is my learning moment. His vocabulary increased incredibly in a short time.
Because when you become aware, your learning speed increases too. When you notice the mistake and give it a shape, the brain marks it more clearly.
The second step is to correct the mistake out loud. Many students do this silently because they feel embarrassed. But when you correct it out loud, the language becomes easier to repeat. Because hearing it and saying it is very effective.
For example, the student says, she go to school, then says, she goes to school, out loud. The brain processes this twice, one incorrect, one correct. This double process strengthens the information.
And here is a small tip. Correct the sentence once, and then repeat it fluently once more. This brings back the rhythm and increases confidence.
The third step is to use the mistake consciously in daily life. For example, a student who forgets to say, "Do you need a bag?" instead of, "Do I need a bag?" can repeat that sentence 3 times a day. Over time, you will see how different the result becomes.
Yes, these small repetitions make the brain store the new information as this is important. Even if it seems small or unnecessary, these kinds of regular repetitions make a big difference.
Let me tell you a short story about this. One of my students always mispronounced the word yesterday. One day they made the mistake again and got really upset. I told them, say this word 3 times consciously today. At the next lesson, the word had completely settled because the emotion that appears at the moment of the mistake speeds up learning. When you add a small repetition on top of it, the information settles fully.
Friends, if you also experience small steps of progress like this, you can write this in the comments. Mistakes made me stronger. This helps you make peace with yourself and inspires other learners.
The fourth step is being kind to yourself. Many students put too much pressure on themselves. They get angry and say, "How could I make such a mistake?" But this emotional load slows learning down.
The most effective approach is this. I made a mistake. I corrected it. I learned. That's it. No dramatic explanation, no heavy judgment.
Yes, this simple cycle makes the English learning journey easier because the brain works better when it feels safe instead of pressured.
Many strong English speakers were not perfect. The only difference was this. They didn't stop at the moment of the mistake. They continued.
And most importantly, they saw the mistake not as an enemy, but as a guide. Because a mistake is a small sign that leads you to the right path.
That's why building a strong habit is very important. When you make a mistake, instead of running away, take a small pause, correct the word, and return to speaking. When repeated, this becomes a reflex.
I had a student who was very shy. Every time they made a mistake, they immediately went quiet. Then they made a small promise to themselves. I will fix it with just one sentence. 3 weeks later, their speaking flow improved noticeably because they no longer saw the mistake as a reason to stop, but as a sign to move forward.
This transformation is very valuable. Courage takes you further than perfection. Many people can't speak because they try to be perfect. But the person who speaks with courage progresses by strengthening through mistakes.
Friends, if you are showing this courage while learning English, you can write this in the comments. I grow through mistakes. This small sentence strengthens both your mind and your intention.
Remember, learning English is not just vocabulary and grammar. It's a mental journey. You learn to hear your own voice, move at your own pace, and accept mistakes.
And maybe the best part is that mistakes stop being something that scares you. Because you know that every mistake is a small teacher leading you to the next correct step.
As you keep speaking, wrong becomes right, challenges become easier, and words become clearer. This is how learning happens.
You are not alone on this journey. Making mistakes is normal, learning takes time, and courage opens every door.